Welcome to the Quest Forums channel. I was recently asked to give kind of a summary, an explanation of the debate over the King James Version of the Bible. And this is something that a lot of Christians are very passionate about, and a lot of other Christians don't really know anything about, even to know that it's going on. But there are two sides. One that says that the King James Version that was completed in 1611, that it is the only English translation that should be in use, that it's the only viable translation of the Bible. And then the other side says that there are a number of more modern translations to choose from, and people should use one of those, but that they should not use the King James Version of the Bible. And there are a lot of different factors to this, but what it really comes down to is the basis of the translation. Because, of course, the New Testament, and it's mostly the New Testament that this comes around, it was written originally in Greek. And it was written almost 2,000 years ago, 27 different books written by a number of different authors, and they wrote it out by hand. And then what they wrote was passed out to various churches who copied it. And then those copies were copied, and those copies were copied, so on and so forth, over the course of centuries until movable type made it so that they could be printed rather than manually written out. Now, in that manual writing, there were occasionally variations that crept in, things that were changed in the text. And so when you look at the old manuscripts that we have, you sometimes see differences. So there's differences basically in everything, but there's kind of two big families of Greek texts, the Egyptian text and the Byzantine text. And so the question is, they're different between each other in mostly the same ways. And so the question is, when there is a difference, which one do you side with? Which one is better, most accurate to the original? Now, people on the side that say you should not use the King James, they say that the Egyptian text is the better one to use. And the reason that they do so is because it's older. The copies that we have of the Egyptian text, they go back as early as the 3rd century. So only about 200 years after the New Testament was written. And so the logic is the closer you are to the original, the more accurate you're going to be. And so that's why they say that whenever there's a dispute, go with that, and the modern translations do that, so that's why it should be used in Bible reading. The opposite argument, the King James Version argument, is that the Byzantine text is the one that should be used in translation. And the reason that they say this is because it was the most widely distributed. So yes, the copies are younger. The oldest copies of the Byzantine text that we have are from about the 9th century, so around 800 years after the writing of the New Testament. But the Egyptian text was lost for a very long time, from about the 4th or 5th century until the 19th century. No one used it. Nobody knew what it was. It was the Byzantine text that was the basis for all Bible reading in that time in between. And what they also say is that the age of the copies doesn't matter, that older copies probably existed of the Byzantine text, almost certainly had to have existed of the Byzantine text, but that they were just lost to time because they weren't preserved in the Egyptian desert. And so that's how this goes, is to say that the church widely used, the copy that they knew was correct, and they put away the copy that they knew was wrong. And so there really is logic to both sides of this. And so how do you make a decision? Well, what I would say is that it actually doesn't matter. That's kind of the funny thing about this, is that for as heated as people can get on this issue, it's actually not that important, because while there are differences, they don't amount to very much. There's about 1,000 disputed words between the Egyptian and Byzantine versions. That's out of more than 180,000 words in the New Testament. And of those disputed words, there's not a single one that makes a doctrinal difference. At any point, none of them change the way that Christianity understands itself. I think one of the most common ones, for example, is whether it should be written as Jesus Christ or Christ Jesus. That's not grounds for dispute. That does not actually change meaning in any way. Meaning never changes across the versions. And so my personal opinion is that I do kind of side with the Byzantine argument, kind of the King James Version argument of things. I do prefer the logic behind that, but it's not enough for me to say that there's something wrong with the more modern translations. And I switch back and forth between them. I think that's actually a good thing to do, something that I recommend. But the point really is to read the Bible that you're comfortable with. As long as it's coming from devoted translators, people who are actually interested in presenting what the Greek says, then it can be trusted because it presents all the same truths of God about the salvation that's available through Jesus Christ. We should be uniting around that, not tearing each other apart over less than 0.5% of difference. So that's my opinion, but like I said, I know a lot of people disagree with me on that, on both sides. So if you feel that way, you want to say something here, feel free to do so. Or if you have a question, go ahead and leave that down in the comments as well. Thanks very much for checking out this video, and until next time, keep looking up.